Hi there, welcome to or welcome back to Tiff Reads Books, or read books and I talk to you about them. I am currently reading The Will of the Many by James Islington or Islington? Anyway, I've never read from this author before, but this to say is the internationally best-selling author of the Licanius trilogy. I know people have mentioned that as a really good one. I have not read it. I have not read honestly, the most fantasy I've read has been in the last 2 years. So I am a baby to fantasy. I knew picking this up 2 things about it. 3 things. One, I knew it was, more. Let me tell you what I knew about it before I picked it up. I knew that this was Roman inspired. I knew this had a pyramid scheme of a magic system where you could give part of your magic to the people above you so that the people above you in this pyramid, which it literally refers to it as a pyramid in the book, because I'm at the point where we're doing world building, get the most magic, and people below literally just get ripped off. So they lose years off their life and stuff. I knew that because some people had that I do not remember which reviews, but they were like, I DNF this. I don't need to read about an MLM in ancient Rome. So Roman inspired pyramid scheme of a magic system. I also knew that this was ideal for fans of Red Rising, that it was giving Darrow vibes. I have not read Red Rising. I actually DNF'd it within the first 5%. So that's how I feel about that. And I knew that, what was the other thing I knew? Red Rising, MLM, Ancient Rome. There was something else that I thought I was going to say. Oh, that it is going to be one of the top fantasies of this year. If you go by Bookstagram and BookTube, this shit is everywhere. I have seen it all over Instagram, like all over. I know that we're getting there's a deluxe edition coming out of the first book so they can match the new covers for the rest of the series. Controversial take, but I like this cover. I prefer this to the one that they put out for the deluxe one that just, what is it? I made a comment to a friend on Instagram and I was like, controversial, but I really like the older ones. And she was like, yeah. She was like, I guess, she's like, the realistic stuff doesn't work for everyone. And I was like, it's not that it's realistic, it's that it's so beige. It's just so earth toned. Like, I'll put one up. It just feels so blah. Like, I don't know. I mean, this is not the most artistic, but I get a vibe from it. Kind of like it. I like the minimalism. Anyway, that's besides the point. Okay, now that I've rambled at you for a long time, I started this, and oh lordy, do I want to DNF it. I'm 82 pages into a 632-page book, which is also why I said I don't know if I'm going to finish this by Saturday, because this is a big boy. This is a big boy. I'm going to spoil The Will of the Many, and I'm going to go ahead and read it, and I'm just going to spoil the whole dang thing. So, 82 pages in, here is what I know so far. Let me go through the chapters by chapter order, because I think I'm on chapter 8. So let me go through and tell you, just give you a hit by hit of what's happened to the best of my ability. For friends, lost is the dedication, which is nice. We have a breakdown of the rankings. Okay, so I didn't see this at first because when you open up an ebook, it just starts you on page 1 of the story a lot of times. So I didn't realize there was a ranking. So what we have here is a table, and I do love a good table. So we have rank on one side and receives will from on the other. So Octavus, which is the lowest rank, they're number 8. They receive will from nobody. They give all of their will. So Septimus receives will from 8 people. They're number 7. Number 6 is Sextus. They receive will from 56 people. Quintus receives rank from 336 people. Quartus receives rank from 1680. Tertius receives rank from 6720. Domitius from 20,160. And Princeps, which is going to be your tap, receives will from 40,320 people. So this is a pyramid scheme. Okay. Part 1. I'm still in part 1. So chapter 1, we're in a prison and we meet Viz. Viz is our main character and he is almost 17. So we are following a child. And he's pretending to be something he's not. We get this kind of from the first chapter. And this person who claims to be a sexist comes in and they want to see the specific prisoner. And they ask Viz they ask to be taken to it. And Viz offers to take them to the specific prisoner. And this is where we get our first introduction of the magic system kind of here, because we have this prisoner is a guy like strapped to some sort of device called a sapper. This is where this book also uses very literal names for things sometimes. And I think this is like a trend that we're seeing in like newer published fantasy. And I think it has to do with the fact that publishers are like buying into the fact that people need things simple and spelled out for them because nobody has any critical reading anymore. And this is what's feeding into this thing of whether or not people actually do have critical reading or not anymore is not the point of the fact that we're only getting things that are made for non-critical reading. It was really annoying. It's called a sapper because it literally saps their will. So creative. It sounds like I was reading this and I was thinking of the torture device that they put Wesley on in The Princess Bride that like literally pulls his life out of him. Honestly, that's all I could think of. So it saps their will and it sends their will to other people as part of their like punishment. So this guy comes in, he wants to talk to him. They start talking in a language and Viz is like, I know this language because I know so much stuff. And these people don't even know half the things that I know. And I'm just such a secret boy. So I was like, okay, awesome. So he's overhearing stuff in this language and he's like, I don't even care what it was. It was probably important, but my brain was like, oh no, special boy knows all these things. So he finds out secret stuff, and then he has to go off to his second thing of the night, because this is his first job. We find out he's an orphan in the first chapter, and that all orphans have the last name of Solemn or Slalom. I can't remember. I will come across it. So chapter 2, we get Viz going off to the arenas. Or the theaters, I believe is what they call them. So we find out that he fights after he does his time working in the prison. He goes off to the theaters and he fights because he's also, you guys, he's like a really good fighter, even though he's so many years younger than all of these guys. And even though they're taking will from other people, he's like stronger and faster and just a better strategist. It's very John Carter of him. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So he's going to be fighting a Septimus and he's supposed to throw the fight. But he's worried that even though killing is off the line in this, that he's going to be killed. So he decides to like go and fight naked so that his clothes can't be imbued and used to strangle him, which is actually a very 17-year-old logic. So I was like, okay. So he decides to go and fight naked, and he gets asked about all these scars on his back, and something happens that I don't remember, and he like snaps and like goes off on the guy and ends up like brutally beating this guy. So he fails in throwing the fight, so he gets banned from fighting. And there's this whole scene where he like asks the guy, I'm assuming, let me find it. Oh yes, right. So when he makes a comment about how he's fighting naked, he's like, living on the run meant that propriety and advantage were rarely companions. That first year and a half and any reservations I may have once had were beaten out of me long ago. So we find out he's on the run. He's hiding from something. He's hiding his past, which we've kind of had hinted at, that he's more than meets the eye. And he's like in hiding here. So yeah, dude goes out naked. The theater crowd laughs about it, but they're mostly approving, not mocking laughs. He knows they're like, haha, what a weird boy. Like, oh, what a grand move kind of laughs, not like, what the fuck is wrong with this kid kind of. He knows that they're approving of him, because confidence, real or perceived, has a peculiar power over people. okay, I don't like this, right? After the end of this chapter, I was like, I don't like this guy. Um, so he has these scars on his back, and he says that the terrible mass of scars upon scars. It doesn't matter. I doubt she knows what they mean. I have no intention of sharing. He is a very closed off person. He doesn't want to be friends with anyone. He doesn't want anyone to know anything about him. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. And I have said this before. I have just played D&D with too many of those characters for me to like them in books. I hate the lone wolf. I can do it on my own. I hate that shit. I literally cannot with it. Okay? I just Oh, it's a sextus, not a septimus. It is a sextus that he's fighting. So we get a big deal in this chapter. This is chapter 3. A big deal about how he's never ceded will to anyone. That's like a big thing for him. He refuses to, and he refuses to say why he won't. Which I just honestly hate the whole. There's something about this character, and we're not going to tell you what it is. We're just going to tell you there's something, and you're not going to get to know what it is yet. And I hate that use of that. I don't think it's a trope. It's a writing style. And I don't like it. It makes me mad because I'm one of those people that, like, if you're like, oh, I have this really, deep, important thing, but I just can't tell you about it right now. I'm like, okay, cool. Don't tell me then. So then if you keep bringing it up, and I have had friends that have done this, like, oh, well, there's this really secret thing. And because I'm nosy, I'm nosy and I need to know. But if you keep telling me, but I can't tell you, I'm going to start to get pissed and be like, bitch, stop bringing it up. Stop bringing it up, because this is making me not like you, because you know that I need to know things, and you keep doing this just to, like, get me irritated, and you're making me irritated. So stop doing it. Like, there's a thing about, like, holding things back, to keep people interested, but this is just an irritating level of it. At least, I mean, we get a lot of it revealed early, but it still annoys me. Then 45 seconds, he tells him he's old, or he gets told he's old for an orphan, and that no one wants him. This guy is, like, trying to get him, like, get a rise out of him. And he ends up, like, so solemn is what they call orphans. Talks about how his parents must have abandoned him. Were they the ones that whipped him, or did they just leave you to the ones who did? He says he's, like, trying to block out the words. And then he says, I bet your parents were worthless anyway. And that causes Viz to snap and almost kill the guy. But first, like, in the middle of him, like, fighting him, he's like, do you want to know how I got these scars? And I was like, are we doing this? Those aren't his exact words, but that's really, like, what I read from it, because it's like I have 2 notes so far, and it's one of them. It's, you want to know why I have these goddamn scars on my back? And I was like, do you want to know how I got these scars? Like, it's honestly, I was like, okay, so we're doing that. We're doing tortured. So he talks about how he beats him. He pins the guy. He gets, like, in trouble for it. So chapter 4 is after he's beaten the guy. He gets booed by the crowd because, of course, they all bet against him. He gets the woman who runs the fighting ring comes out, and he's like, oh, he cheated. We just found out how he cheated, and don't worry, he's banned from here forever. He's going to be exiled. And then he gets, like, sent to this, like, her back room, because she really likes him, because everyone just likes him. They just like him. He's just so likable. So she, like, sends him to this back room to hide him so that nobody from the crowd, like, attacks him, because he lost him money, and because he refused to throw the fight. And so then, like, the guy who he made a bet on himself for comes back and gives him his money and is like, I know you didn't cheat, because, like I said, everyone likes him. Oh, okay, so he says that, like, the fight lasted exactly how long it was supposed to last, like, how long that Viz made the bet that it would, and then he won, so he gives him the money because it was worth it for seeing an Octavus beat a Sextus. So he's safe. Nothing bad's going to happen to him. And then he goes home to the orphanage, and the matron there, who apparently just uses him as, like, a slave and takes, like, a large chunk of his wages from all of his jobs, was like, there's an adopter coming today, so you're going to only get a couple hours of sleep because you came home so late, and I need you to help get the kids ready. So get to it. So chapter 5, he gets woken up, and we find out that the person that was coming, that was the adopter, was, surprise, the man from the prison the other night. And he's not actually a Sextus like he said he was. He's a Quintus. and he wants Viz. Because everyone likes Viz. He like goes through this whole like interview spiel with him, and he's like, "How smart are you? Prove it to me." And Viz is like, "Man, I am so fucking smart." And through Viz's like inner monologue, we find out that his name is Rex at the orphanage for some reason. And we find out that he is actually a prince. I believe it's in chapter 5. So he's actually a prince. And so he's had a royal education. So he's just so fucking smart. And he's actually been in the fighting rings so that he can use the money he earns to bribe the people at the library to let him read books so that he can keep his education going. And somehow he's like had all this time to train in fighting too. Because he's a royal, so he's had 14 years of sword fighting because he was 14 when his like family went down. I don't know if that was chapter 6 that we learned about that, because we're learning about this from like his inner monologue and him thinking about things in his past. I believe it's in this chapter we learn that his family was royal and they were recently taken over. So also the matron didn't want to let him leave because how dare you take that child? He's such a horrible child. So of course she gets a threat from Quintus because gotta do good things for Viz. So it's just like this boy. It's been 3 years and the official story is that I'm dead. No one is looking for me anymore, if they ever were. Whether I'm here or in the country cocooning the beating heart of the Republic, it probably doesn't matter. Besides, there's no going back. So this is like world building. He is a royal from a family who used to rule here and was killed. And now he's like in hiding so that he doesn't get killed. Chapter 7, he is like on like a traveling thing with Ulciser is the name of the guy who adopted him, and it gets attacked. And I believe that's what happens in chapter 7. And we find out his name is actually Diago instead, because they get attacked by a group that wants to start some sort of uprising or something. And we find out that not only Ulciser wants Viz to go to this academy and be his spy, this group of people who are also working against Ulciser and against the guy that Ulciser is working against want Viz to go to this academy, but they don't want him to go under Ulciser's supervision because they don't think he's ready, and they would want to do the training on Viz because they want him to be on their team. Because at 16, he's just like the best guy that ever died, and we all need him on our team because he's 16. So he's gonna change the world. This is supposed to be an adult novel, I'm pretty sure, and we have a 16-year-old who's gonna change the world. So I'm not invested. I honestly think that this character is not going to be for me. This is wildly overrated so far. So again, I am at page 82. And I am page 82, and I'm in chapter 8. Okay. So there's 632 pages. I'm at 12% of this book, and I've been reading it for 3 days because I have had a lot going on. I did actually read like 45 pages today while I was at work, so I'm happy about that in between while waiting for fish. So I'm going to be reading some more tonight, I think, and I'm not going to be checking with you as much. So this is the magic system. So this is the world building and the magic system part. I've heard from some people that the reason that didn't, because I put on Instagram, like I'm 2 chapters in and I'm not liking the main character. Is this going to get better? I'm not invested. Like, is this going to get better or should I quit? Like, if I don't like Viz now, I think I said, if I don't like Viz now, am I going to like him or like, and I had a couple people message me. One person was like, "Oh, I didn't really connect with him at first, but after about 150 pages or so, I really started to like him." And I'm like, "Oh, we gotta go 150 pages with this boy." There's another friend of mine, and when I said I was gonna pick it up, because she said she DNF'd to like 56%. I was like, "Oh no, this library hold just came through," and she was like, "Thankfully, it's from the library," because her and I tend to, a lot of the books that she doesn't like, I tend to also not like. But then a couple of other people who I tend to be pretty aligned with really liked this book. So One of them was like, yeah, it took me about 100 pages because I didn't really understand the magic system, so I wasn't connecting with it. So for me, I don't have a problem with the magic system. It's the character. So the magic system is essentially a pyramid scheme. Everyone has this thing called will, and they can, I guess, if they go to this specific place, I can't remember what it is called. You basically learn to cede or give some of your will to somebody above you, and that person accrues your power. And with your powers combined, they can start to do some magic because they have more strength of will. So they can be stronger, faster, they can do mild magic things. There is a ship type thing that Ulciser and Viz, Rex, Diago travel on, and it is literally like suspended from the air, suspended in the air by magic. But it takes concentration from multiple people to do it, who are taking a large amount of will from other people. Essentially, that's the magic system. It's not. It's an OP magic system that is the book series, because it's going to be a series, is literally called the Hierarchy series. It's a pyramid scheme. So I'm guessing Viz is going to be the special boy to break the pyramid scheme. So, because that's his whole goal. Vengeance. And yeah, we still don't know a lot about him.
Hello. It is late. Well, it's not late. I've just been up for a long time. My face is a little sunburnt. I was outside at work all day today. It is salmon season, so I am in my busiest season of work. I'm a little exhausted, and so I only read 61 pages today of The Will of the Many. This is your check-in for The Will of the Many. It's Tuesday, so this is day 2 of me reading this book, and I read, well, it's day 3 technically, I think. I read 61 pages today. That brought me up to 22% into the book. So I just wanted to check in. I made some bullet points because I knew I would not be able to like remember in order what happened and the things specifically that did happen if I just tried to talk to you off the top of my head. I have been up since 5:30 in the morning. It's 9:50. I have to get up at no, I've been up since 5 in the morning. And it's 9:50. I have to get up at 5 again tomorrow. And then go spend another day outside. It's supposed to rain instead of be sunny. I forgot sunscreen today. It's been a day. So 61 pages puts me up to 22%. And I have some observations of things. So let me go through the bullet points with you of what happened. So what has happened today I think last I checked with you, I was on chapter 8. This brought me up to chapter 15, I believe. So another chunk. Okay, so last I checked with you, I believe Viz and Ulciser had been attacked, and there were these like 3 people, and they also, like, 3 people attacked, then someone shot Ulciser with an arrow that knocked him out instantly. He shot in the knee and the arrow knocked him out. Magic-y thingies, apparently. So this woman who did the shooting was like, we also want you to attend the academy for our reasons. So that's where we were. So Viz managed to get the transect going. He drug Ulciser back to the transect and got it going. Shocker. I know. They made a pit stop at the school. That's where Viz woke up because he like passed out from the pain. He'd like been like cut in the belly or something with a sword. And so he got the transect going and then passed out, woke up in the school that they're supposed to go to eventually. But I guess it was like on the way to Ulciser's house. So he woke up with these 2 kids like talking about him. And so they like introduced themselves, gave him some water, asked him some questions. And this is when I realized that every man in this book gets described as like handsome. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I looked it up. And the word handsome is actually only used 14 times in the book. But all of them are referring to men. And which is, I mean, yeah. But sometimes you'll have like an older woman described as a handsome woman. Like, so I was like, maybe. But they're all describing men, not objects. Men. The word pretty is used more than that, but most of it is like I pretty much felt, or it was like it was a pretty view. Beautiful is the same way. It was a beautiful view. This is a beautiful painting. This is a beautiful building. Pretty and beautiful are used to describe women or girls 2 times each, and they're both to describe the same girl. So, we know who the love interest is, but I won't spoil it yet. So, well, I guess I kind of have, because I said we met this girl. One of them was this girl, and he hasn't described her as pretty yet, but it's the only woman who he described other than just by her hair color. So I was like, okay, we gotta pay attention to this girl. They started asking questions and then they ran away because someone was coming. It was the doctor who was actually, dun dun dun, Viridius. He's the principalist of the school. He is the guy that Viz is supposed to be investigating, even though he's not an investigator. So he's supposed to be spying on this guy. So he meets him. Dude asks him some questions. Viz is like, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell him. So he gives him like the most basic of basic information. Ulcissor bursts in the room. Save. Tells him this is Viridius, and Viridius is like, oh, sorry, I don't like to introduce myself to students because sometimes it makes them nervous. And Viz was like, all right, weird, bro. So that happens, and then Viz and Ulcissor go on a walk. We get some exposition dump about Ulcissor's brother dying at the school, and about how he thinks it was to like hide some shady shit. They get to the villa, and Viz gets introduced to his teacher, Lanistia, and some dude named Cam, something Kam. My arms are so sore. I really should have set up my tripod. I've been picking up like 5 to 10 pound fish all day and like throwing them. We processed over 1,000 fish today, and I probably did a third of that, so I processed about 300 fish today. So I did like 300 reps of lifting and throwing like 5 to 10 pounds. My arms are a little sore. Yesterday we did even more than that, and the day before was even more than that, and a lot more big fish, because we had some Chinook, and the Chinook are weighing like 10 to 15 to 20 pounds. Anyway, I'm sore, so holding my arm straight out to hold my phone. Anyway, so yeah, she is not pleased that he brought back a child, that Ulcissor brought back a child. And she's like, what about your wife? And Viz is like, hold up, wife? And then he's like, oh, I guess he is like the proper age to be married, where it's more financially responsible to have children. And I was like, oh, child is cat lady checking in. So Viz like tries to fuck around immediately. He's like, I gotta spy on their conversation. Gets found out immediately. So that was kind of like, I was like, okay, good. But he's like, oh, but now I learned that they are tracking me, so it's a win for me. And I was like, bro, just take the L. Just take the L. I am not sorry to this man, and I do not like this man. Okay, so she's kind of harsh, and this is where I saw a couple people saying that Babel was like this, and it's like, okay, so we do get a harsh training montage, but Babel had a lot more to say about abusive relationships and racism and classism in its abusive training montage. This doesn't say anything except for like, Viz needs to be a little bit humbled, which I agree with, because this woman is like, you're not as good as you think you are. Let me prove it. Bitch, I ain't got no eyes, and I'm better at fighting than you. Let me prove to you that you are not the hot shit you think you are. And Viz is like pissed that she's better than him at things. And I'm like, bro, you are a 16-year-old boy. And he's like, I have royal training. And I'm like, she got life training. And she's wealthy. Like, she's a sextess. She's higher up in the hierarchy. She's married. She's like not married. She's like I don't know what she is, but she like kind of runs Ulcissor's household. It's not his wife, but she like runs the household. I'm like, this woman has status, and also she says she went to this academy, so maybe listen to her. But he's like constantly like pushing back at her the whole time. I need him to be like broken completely, kind of. So he's like repeatedly getting pissed, and he's like, why do you keep telling me that I'm not good enough? And she's like, well, Ulcissor's concerned about your pride and your temper, so I'm pushing your buttons. And instead of him being like, okay, I need to like, be more reasonable with my reactions to things, he's just like, bitch, fight me for it. And I'm like, this is the boy that I'm going to be stuck with for the rest of this book. I'm at the point where I'm not going to be continuing this series for this, but I will finish this first book. I do not get 150 odd pages into a book to just be like, okay. Like, I struggle to do that. If it was an audiobook, it'd be easier for me to turn it off, but it's like, I'm into this book, and I've already started this video, so we're fucking going. Okay, so she takes him to this, like, labyrinth, and I need to go back and re-skim it, because, like, I read it, but there was a lot going on around me when I was reading it, and I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck is happening? There's, like, these onyx panels that you have to slide, and I was like, wait, is he sliding a physical panel, or is he sliding a map on his arm that represents the labyrinth, and then the panel will move, which I think is what was happening, but I needed to double check. He goes to, like, push the first panel, and I believe that's where I got the thing that is on his wrist, because it, like, shatters because he moved it wrong and, like, sliced a big gash into his finger. So Lan, whatever, has to, like, stitch him up, and he's like, oh, you're really good at this. And she's like, I have brothers. And I was like, oh, so men do things that get them hurt. Gotcha. Okay. So Viz is, like, freaking out because, so this woman has, like, 2 months to train him, and then he gets to go to the academy, but the Anguis, I don't know, the people who were trying to kidnap him gave him 1 month before they would kidnap him. So he's going to find a way to get to them, but he's being tracked through his clothing, and he can't leave the premises because he's not necessarily to be trusted because nobody knows jack shit about him. So that's where we're at. So I did look up today because I mentioned on Instagram that I was like, okay, I guess I can see where some people would say this is maybe kind of like Babel with this training montage, blah, blah, blah. And someone was like, Babel, excuse me? And I was like, girl, there are so many weird, like, comps listed on Reddit for this. Jade City was listed. I guess because magic. What was the other one? Because there's only a couple that I've read that were listed as comps. Babel, Jade City, and Swordcatcher. And I was like, Swordcatcher? Swordcatcher. What? I don't see any of that in here, except for people were like, oh, it's like a tragic orphan story, and they're going to try to take on the government. And I was like, okay, sure. I guess also Jade City because of orphan and magic. And then Blood Over Brighthaven, which I have not read, but it's because of a murder in a school setting, I guess. The Secret History, they said with The Will of the Many is like the secret history with fantasy elements and more dark academia. And I was like, I didn't think this was a dark academia. Okay, so murder mystery, fantasy elements makes it The Secret History. And then what was the other weird ass? A memory called Empire, because they were like, yeah, let's take down the Empire. So therefore it's a comp for that. Also the Traitor Baru Cormorant, which from what I have read from the synopsis, absolutely not. Like, that's on my TBR. I had it in my hands and then went, I have too many long books this month. This was like back in like March or April, and I went, I can't get to this. So I still want to get it. My library has a physical copy. I'm going to pick it up. Anyway. Okay, so I just finished chapter 22. I am now 1/3 into the book. It's taken me a little while. I took a few days off. So a lot has happened. Let's see, where did I end off? So Viz has been training. There's a dude that was like, I need you to let my daughter train with you. And Viz got to make that decision because Ulcesor was out of town. So he went with this girl to this like fight thing. And at the fight thing is when he chose to make his move to speak to the Anguis. I don't know how to pronounce it. And so he goes down into the sewer, finds out their leader is actually his father's old advisor. Dude tries to convince him to join their side and to kill people, and Viz is like, nah, not my scene, I don't kill people. They have like this argument. Viz leaves. Dude attacks the arena, and right before he attacks the arena, the woman who originally attacked Ulcesor gives Viz this stylus. Not like a pen stylus, but like a metal weapon. And puts his blood on it, and she's like, there, now you can get close to I don't know. Melior is what they are calling him, but that's not his actual name. I can't remember his name because names. So he like he like goes back down into the sewers when the attack happens to get this girl safe, and then he comes back up and managed to get close enough, and this guy grabs the stylus and like himself while Viz is holding it, so it looks like Viz is the hero. So there's a reason behind that. We haven't been given enough information to figure out exactly why, but they did want him to like go into the academy and like come out on top and like be the best that he could be, and so that they could put him in power somehow. So I'm sure it has something to do with that. And for some reason this whole event caused Viz to like pass out for a week and sleep for a week. So that's pretty much what's happened in the last like 30 pages. That all happened very quickly. And I was like, okay, this is kind of a big thing, so I feel like I should check in, even though it's like I'm still not very much farther in the book. So according to my Kindle, I have 9 hours and 28 minutes left to go. And I'm like, oh boy, this is a long book. So I'll check in the next time a big thing happens, I think. That's what we'll do. Oh, we did get a bunch more information on Ulcister's brother, who died at the academy. It was ruled a suicide. Turns out Lenistia is was dating Ulcister's younger brother when he died. She doesn't remember anything, but the attack is how she lost her eyes, and she doesn't remember what happened. That's pretty much it. Ulcister does not believe that it was a suicide because his brother was sending him like cryptic messages, and he didn't notice it until like the last letter, and he had like already thrown away the other one, so he has no idea what this like cryptic thing means because it's in reference to something that he had talked about previously. So Viz is like a little more on his side at this point, so yeah, we'll see what happens. So I'm now on page 280, so 45% through. And I honestly think this would have been better if it was written in third person, because we wouldn't have to have been directly in Viz's head. And my issue with Viz, and it's taking me a bit to figure out how to put words to it. My main issue is I just don't like being in the head of an angry character, of a character who's constantly having to stifle their rage and like push it down and not let it explode, and like someone who's just on edge all the time. I don't find that to be a compelling character. I think characters should be allowed to have anger and be able to feel some of that, especially someone who's gone through like what this character has gone through with their family being killed and them being like having to go on the run and into the society that they don't accept and they don't want to be a part of, so that they can like the society that wants to exploit them. I fully understand having some anger, and I think that's valid and acceptable, but it's the constantly having to push down anger. And I'm kind of contrasting this with the book that I'm listening to on audio right now, which is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. And that character, she has some anger from things that have happened to her, but it's not her entire character. It's not her first initial response to everything. It was anger in response to grief and frustration over a situation that she had been shoved into and not consensually accepted. And she has other responses to other things, and she does learn to manage her anger. She still has some like anger responses given what she's been through, and like I said, that's valid. But that's not her initial response to everything, is to get angry. And I think Viz's initial response is to get angry about everything. And that makes it not fun for me. I can't root for this character. But now that we're in the school and we're starting to get some other characters, I'm a little more interested in it, because I actually think Viz is the least interesting character in this whole book. Like, he is the least interesting character. He has the least amount of depth, honestly. So, okay. We're in the school. Viz spent one whole day in the bottom class because he's just so smart. So he got instantly promoted to 6th and he's not having a good time of it because the preceptor, so the teacher in charge of that class, does not like him. We've just found out that he doesn't like him because of his last name, because he has an issue with Ulcesur, so he does not like... Well, he has an issue with Ulcesur's last name because the death of Ulcesur's brother allowed Viridius, who is the principalis or whatever of the whole thing, to be promoted, and not Dultatus. Dultatus, I think is his name, is the preceptor for the 6th. So his friend was going to be promoted, and he was going to get to be his second, and he blames the death of Ulcesur's brother, so therefore he hates the last name Telemus. Convoluted as fuck, but I can see people making that. I hate everyone involved in this scenario that has kept me from getting promoted. I do have an issue with every man in this book who is rude and a dick is also fat. We're describing them all as portly. They're all fat and bald, so that's fun for me. That's great fun. But yeah, there's commentary on society and how it's set up and how nothing is a true meritocracy, and so we're kind of discussing that. It all seems really obvious stuff. But yeah, Viz is the least likable character. So I'm gonna keep reading, I'll check in with you in a bit. Okay, we're back. So I can't remember if I said this, but I got a notification that The Will of the Many was due back. I had it on digital through Libby. It was due back at my library, and I couldn't renew because there were like 8 people waiting for it. So it was like, you can try and renew, but it probably won't go through. So I tried to renew, and it was like, nope, sorry, we can't. And it was like, okay, you can put yourself on the hold list so you can finish it. And I was like, bro, the hold list was already like 18 weeks before I got it this time. So I had 3 days left to finish 330-ish pages. And I was like, yikes, do I want to do that? Because I, last weekend, went to the ocean with my boyfriend, and I was like, do I want to try and read 330 pages in the 3 days when I'm at the ocean of a book I'm not really enjoying, or do I want to just sit and read a book I'm enjoying? And I decided I wanted to read books I was enjoying. So I decided to put it on hold. I put it on hold by pausing my reading of it. I returned it back to Libby 3 days early, as I was like, fuck it, we're just gonna return it back. And I used an Audible credit, and I got it on Audible. So today I've listened to, I don't know, like an hour of the book. I'm a little over 50% through. Here's the thing that I was going to check in with you about. Okay, so at 50% in, we have met who I was calling Ulcesur. It's actually, oh shoot, I forgot how they pronounce it. Ulquisker? Ulcisker? Oh my god, how was it pronounced? It was not pronounced the way that I was pronouncing it, and I was like, wow, I've been way off. But anyway, I will get it right the next time. His wife is actually the woman who is in charge of the Anguis, who are the political rebel group that want to use Viz. So yeah, and he's still not advancing past 6th. It's been 2 months now, and he's like, it's because they hate me. But he's friends with the big bully guy who he punched and broke his nose on the first day. He's now friends with that guy because, of course he is, because we've got to get our ragtag crew together. So yeah, they speak a dead language together, and they're buddies now. So that's kind of what's happening. I genuinely still not interested. Being in Viz's head in audio is almost worse. Almost worse. So I'm gonna do better about taking notes. But I could not believe it when I was like, are you kidding me? His wife is the leader of this group. And I was probably supposed to be excited about this plot twist, and I'm not. So yeah, hopefully I can finish this in a few days, and I'll catch up with you.
Okay, so I'm down here. I'm at chapter 53, and that puts me at 72% into this book. a lot of stuff has happened, and so I'm going to give you like the That's What You Missed on Glee wrap up. So Viz, okay, let me take a breath. Viz went over to the Festival of the Ancestors. He met his adoptive mother, who he found out is actually the leader of the Anguis, which are the people who are leading the rebellion, and he killed their leader. And so she's like, haha, I'm actually your mother now. So you're going to definitely do what I tell you, or I'm going to out you to everyone. And so he kind of makes a deal with her. And also he's working with Ulkeeser. It's Ulkeeser, which I think I like Ulcesar better. Ulkeeser. And he basically tells him, look, I have a plan to investigate these other ruins that are over here near this thing. And it's good. I need you to make me a thing. And this thing turns out to be like some way that he can jump off the transvect into the water. So the transvect are like these floating train car type things. And so he can jump off into the water and then scale a wall and investigate these ruins that are there that he thinks are going to be similar to the ruins he already investigated. And I'm like, why do you think they're going to be similar? But whatever. And so he investigates them, and he's got like 24 hours, and he's like, yeah, I'm totally going to do this. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to swim a shit ton. I'm going to climb a rock wall. I'm going to run through the jungle. I'm going to come back. I'm going to scale down a rock wall. I'm going to swim through the ocean. And then I'm going to get like launched by a bracer, like a bracelet, not even a bracer, a bracelet onto my wrist. I'm going to get like fucking pulled up into the transvect so that I can be like magnetized up into it so I can get out of the water, jump back on the transvect like nobody's going to fucking know anything. So he does this. In this thing, he finds out it's another labyrinth, and he meets at this person who is probably like a revenant of some sort, and they basically have the same issue with their eyes as Lanicia, the woman who is training him with Ulkeeser, who is Siror. And every time I hear Siror, and especially the way that the voice actor says it, I want to go Cyril Figgis, like every fucking time. Anyway, Siror is the brother that committed suicide that we're investigating for. So he finds these ruins. These people have the same issues with their eyes as Lanicia, I cannot remember her name at the moment. And he's like, okay, clocked that, and still can't figure out how, that might be related to what's wrong with her eyes. They tell him this is a test, and he runs through these questions with them because he's like, I'm so smart, I'm going to outsmart these things. They can only answer specific questions, so he tries to get as much information as he can. He swims back, he finds a wolf pup, or a Alupi. That's what they call this wolf, not wolf thing. He finds a cub, and of course, he gives it some of his food, and he heals it, and then it's going to come back later. It's going to be a plot point. So he like saves a wolf cub, and he's like, damn it, I'm such a weak man. I can't even kill a wolf pup. And I'm like, all right. So then he swims a shit ton because, we're Olympic gold swimmers as well. So he manages to get out. Nobody fucking notices anything. Iqua is her name. I thought it was Aqua, but it's Iqua. So her name's Iqua, and then I just want to call her Horse every fucking time. So Horse is like, suspicious. I'm suspicious about you. So Aiden, I think it's Aiden, the dude who he speaks the dead language with, he is like, they're still like buddy. And when they come back from the festival, we find out that somebody died. And so that gives Viz a place to move up in ranks. And the lecturer above is like super pissed at Dultatus because Dultatus doesn't want to advance Viz. So she comes in and starts an argument, and she's like, give me one person who's better than Viz at anything. And she's like, sword fighting. This guy's totally better at sword fighting than Viz. And she's like, that's a fucking cop out. We don't sword fight at this level, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but it's still a fair university assessment. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go fighty fight. So of course, everyone in school finds out about it. And Amisa, the chick that's going to be the love interest, she like comes running up to Viz because of course Viz gets punished and has to go to the stables for another night so that he can't practice. But she comes running up and she's like, I got you. We're going to practice. And he's like, no, I can't, because I told Aiden that I would teach him common tonight. And so he goes to teach Aiden because he's such a stand-up man. So he goes to teach Aiden, and Aiden's like, bitch, what the fuck is wrong with you? We're going to go practice right now. So they get there, and Amisa's there, and Aiden's like, oh, I didn't know this is a date. I should leave. And I'm like, fuck off. So teenagers, man, this needs to be a YA. This needs to be labeled YA. So we find out the armor is like will imbued, and basically they're like shadow fighting. So they're like everything they do with their body causes the armor to do it, so that way the armor can be injured and it won't hurt them. However, of course, so Viz is after 3 rounds. He loses the first 2, but on the third, he never loses again. Because he was trained to sword fight for 5 years. So from the age of what, like 7 to 13, he was taught to sword fight. So therefore, he's better than all. He hasn't done it in 4 fucking years, but you know he's better than everyone because he got taught by the best of the best. Of course, he got taught by the best of the best because otherwise we wouldn't have a fucking book. I hate main characters like this. So fights, he wins. We go to the fight, and the whole school's there because Deltatus thinks he's going to throw him off, but he's like, he didn't know that I fought in the theater thing, whatever it was called. So Viz is like not bothered by the crowd. What he is bothered by is the fact that this dude is actually really fucking good. And so Viz manages to get a hit off on his knee. So what's supposed to do, the armor is supposed to lock and cause it so that he can't move that leg. But it doesn't happen. So Viz is like, hold up, like something's wrong. And the teacher who wants him to be promoted into 5th is like, yeah, something's wrong. They check the armor and it works. Nothing's wrong with it. So we all know something shady is happening, right? So Viz eventually fucking snaps. And instead he like throws the sword, dude ducks the sword, and then he just fucking tackles him and like bashes his head into the ground. And apparently this makes the dude wearing the armor's head get bashed into the ground. But I was like, I thought the whole point of the armor not being on you and you fighting armor to armor was that you couldn't hurt each other. Apparently fucking not. And of course Viz just gets away with this. Because he like then impales the armor, the helmet. He takes the helmet and he like impales it on both swords, and it doesn't lock up the other armor, so everyone can know that like something's fucking wrong. So that happens. So he gets promoted to 5th, and within like a week, he's already promoted again to 4th. And the guy who's in charge of 4th is like Skeetus. He's like, bro, you need to learn how to like be friendly with people. And Viz is like, fuck people. And dude's like, I don't care. Anyone in 4th and 3rd is going to be a senator, and you need to learn how to fucking interact with people. So Viz is all like pouty about it, but he does it. And he's like, I'm just going to turn the charm on. So of course he does. And of course, everyone just loves him immediately. But Iqua is still suspicious of him. And so they go to another festival, and we get told by Viz, I'm above all these festivals for all these gods. They just, none of them do anything for me except for this one because it's about feasting. And when I was like a poor boy on the streets, this feast got me through because people fed me. So, you know, religious celebrations are only useful to him if they benefit him. He doesn't see any point in cultural shit unless it directly benefits him. So he goes to this thing, and he gets like hunted down because Iqua does not believe him on anything. But she comes to the conclusion that he's using will, and that's why he's so good at things. And so, of course, you know, we get that. I don't have to use will. I'm just fucking good. So, kill me now. So Viz gets attacked. He of course wins when Skeetus calls off the fight and is like, Iqua, you were wrong. And so Iqua's going to get like demoted in rank, not class, but in rank within the class, which of course is going to make a path for Viz to go up. So after all this, he also gets invited to spend the semester break with the thirds to do some training. And it just so happens that training is going to be on the island of Seuss. I really want to call it Sus just because I think it's funny. But that's going to be on the training on the island of Seuss. And so he's like, I can't go there. And the woman who is Ro, she's like, I set it up so that it would be there because you know all the secrets of the castle. So when all those senators that are going to be there have their secret military meeting, I need you to spy on the secret military meeting because, of course, you know all of the like back passages so you can get your way in. So now we're there. And of course, I mean, this is valid. Viz is having like issues with seeing like his culture destroyed, his community destroyed, everything he grew up, but he just can't help but focus on the fact that the castle doesn't look like the way that it used to look, or that whatever you want to call their version of a castle. That's what he's actually upset about, is that like his castle doesn't look the same, and they're not cooking the food the same, and they're calling it like a real traditional dish of the region, and it's not cooked the same. And I'm like, why is this what we're focusing on, that they painted a wall a different color? That's what you're upset about. Like, and you're upset that there is one of your father's advisors is now advising because Maybe he just did it to save his life. But of course, it's not going to be. It's going to be because he was behind it all along. Well, he was like willing to sell out. That's what's going to happen. So Amisa just led Viz off to go have a private conversation. So, but Viz has already told us that he's above canoodling because he's a prince and he's not allowed to. So no dalliances are allowed. This boy, I should say, because he's 17. This boy is insufferable. And I am like, I'm over him. I genuinely don't understand how people can enjoy being in his head. The book kind of works otherwise, but Islington has built this fucking John Carter character where he's just good at everything. He's better than everyone at everything. Nothing slows him down for more than a chapter. There's literally no stakes for him. I am not worried about anything that's going to happen to him. He's going to come out perfectly fucking fine. Nothing's going to happen to any of his friends. Equa is going to come around. She's going to support him. We already have Calidus, who is like trying to figure out where Viz is really from. We know he's going to find out and he's going to be on Viz's side. We already have Iden, who is. Amisa is too, because it turns out she can speak that dead language that both Iden and Viz can speak. So we know she's going to like come around and be on his side. I'm not worried for any of these characters that have been introduced to us. And I honestly think all of them are more interesting than Viz. I want to know more about Iden. I'd like to know more about Calidus. But now we're painting Calidus kind of weird. Like he's like the nerdy guy who's like obsessed with girls but can't get one. Is kind of how we're like painting him. And I'm like, I prefer him. I prefer Iden. I would prefer to have a book from Equa's perspective because she seems smart and motivated and interesting and has more emotions than anger. Viz's only emotion is anger. And I get it, you know, right? He's like been through a traumatic experience. He's lost his whole family, his whole culture, everything's been taken away from him. But all he is angry. And we can only spend so long in a character who's just angry. And so it's making me angry. I'm going to go do something other than read this book. I have 3.5 hours left, I think, in the book. So I should finish it. I probably can't do 3.5 full hours of listening to this. Like, I think I did 2. Actually, I think I did 3 today because my drive home took almost 2 hours. So I'm going to try and knock it out tomorrow so I can get this video out by this weekend. But man, this is a rough one. And the problem here is, right, the writing is not bad. The story idea is not bad. It's overdone, but it's not bad. This is probably a 3-star book, but Viz is a 1-star character. And that's honestly, you will not change my mind that Viz is more than a 1-star character. If this story followed any of these other characters, I might be more interested in it. It being first person and being from his perspective is just killing me. It's killing me. Third person might even make it better than first person. It's just, I'm on the struggle bus. I'm on the struggle bus. Okay, we are ready to wrap this up. I finished The Will of the Many today. Boy, oh boy. So I still stand by this book is like a 3-ish. I actually think it's closer to like a 2.75, 2.5, based on the ending. So let's get into the ending. So basically, just to give you the brief, because this book is so long and it did not need to be. There's like this competition at the end of the year for the level 3s to decide who goes on to like compete for like the top 2 tiers, essentially. And so like the highest ranked person in class 3 is going to get the rank of Domitor, and they're going to like be able to choose whatever they want to choose as far as like their future. So this, they decide, is going to happen earlier than expected. And it's basically as soon as Viz gets bumped into class 3. So he gets into class 3 by deciding to tell Amisa that he wants to trick Belly, this other girl in class 3 who nobody really likes, to play a game called Foundation against him. It's basically like historic chess type, from what I can gather. And he decides to do this to her because Calidus comes to him and he's like, oh, Belly is the reason I'm actually a level 7, because I found out that a bunch of people were dying because my dad is the censor, and I knew a ton of people died at the school, and that the years, like, it's been ramping up in deaths and I presented this information to her so that she would be fully informed going in to level 3 because it's the 3s and 4s dying, and I really like wanted to protect her because I thought we were friends. And instead she like took the information and used it to blackmail me to get me to drop out of class 3 and down to class 7. And then he was like, but lately she's been asking for more and more information, and since I can't give it to her, like, she's gonna out me essentially. And this could get him thrown into a sapper, which is like a prison cell that like sucks your will out of you. My best understanding of will is that it is like your life force energy. I'll get into that at the end. Anyway, so he competes against this game against her, and he's like, if I win, you you drop your rank so that I can take your place. If you win, I will go. He names a specific branch that he'll go into. Like, he guarantees that he'll go into this like one field where basically like he'll have nothing to do with her. And so she's like, bet. And then he pretends that he's not very good until she gets comfortable, like he does with everything. And then he like suddenly is like so fucking skilled because he had lessons, he had lessons on this when he was like 13. So since he was like 13, he's like totally the best. Because, he had lessons from the best people at this game. Just like, he had lessons from the best people in everything. I have opinions on that. Anyway, so he like draws her in, and he's like, we could still just end this in a draw where we both walk away if you go and get those papers for Calidus and give them to him. So she's like, done, deal. And then when she comes back, he goes against his word and beats her anyway so that he can get into class 3. And so he's in class 3. He's only in class 3 for like a short amount of time, and then they decide they're going to go do this competition. And it's basically like a life or death type of thing where like you could, because you're out in nature with like a group of people, and essentially there's like they get to choose who they want. So he asked Iden and Calidus, but then Iden comes to him and Iden's like, oh, I need to tell you that I have to back down because you won't be able to trust me if I'm on your team. And so he bows out, and so he gets Equa, and Equa is like shooketh by whatever she gets offered by Viridius, like because the fourths get offered something. And then we get this whole like explanation of the game that they're going to be playing, where no matter who wins, like you can turn on anybody, even if you're like conscripted under a third, you could still end up turning against them and being the winner. And they're like, it's supposed to represent the military. And I'm like, but you can't turn against your leader in the military. Like, you can't. Like, you can, but you're not going to come out of that looking very good. So I don't understand that of it. But this whole thing was just, so remember how I said the wolf? He named it Diago, which is his name. So he named it Diago. Remember how I said that wolf was going to come back? Of course, it fucking came back and saved him multiple times, just out of fucking nowhere. This dog saved him. So it was like a fucking, however you pronounce that Latin word for hand of God. Anyway, it was just like something happens and Viz gets saved because of this wolf pup, because he saved the wolf pup. And I was like, fuck you, Viz. So he ends up going and he has to run the labyrinth, this like secret one that he found, because if he doesn't, then Ulkisker is going to put him in a sapper if he doesn't run it. And even Lanastia is like, yeah, you're right that you have done everything that Ulkisker has asked you, but you still got to do this last thing. And he's like, bro, I could die. And they're like, you're an orphan. Who the fuck cares? So that happened. I think it's supposed to show like the single-mindedness of like Ulkisker on finding out what happened to his brother. And now he's willing to sacrifice pretty much anything except for himself to figure out what happened to his brother. So this is where I started frustrated. Viz runs this thing. He ends up seeing Belly like dead. No explanation of why she's in there, why she's dead, whatever. Or even what information. Like, we have no resolution on what information she was trying to get out of Calidus and why. And like any of that. We have none of that. Like, it's just like, oh, she's dead. And so, of course, he gets out as he's like fleeing from these like zombie type, revenant type things that are like in part of this like labyrinth. When he gets out, he ends up like having these like writing come across his skin. Like, it's like cutting into his skin to like write out instructions for him. And then, so he like starts to run, and then he thinks he's gonna be trapped by all these people, and then Diago comes out of nowhere and just starts fucking murdering people. And so then he's like, okay, I can take out a couple. And then him and Diago get like pretty heavily injured. Dude, like, it's like the back of his arm bit by a man, like, and human bites are nasty. So it looks like he might lose his arm. But him and the wolf both survive the night. They go back to camp, and they like figure out where all the other people are. They try to find them, but as the way to find them, they end up finding this like whole pit of bodies, because Viz had stolen this like tracker from their safety team, and then they like find the whole safety team like dead in a pit along with Iroh, this like kid who wanted Viz dead because Viz didn't stop the Anguis attack at the fight thing that when he killed Melior. They're like, oh, you didn't do it fast enough, so my sister still died, so I want you dead, because my sister died because you didn't do it fast enough. And I also hate Ikwa because I know that you didn't kill him faster because you were saving Ikwa. So, what the fuck ever. So he's dead too, so then Viz is like, oh shit, we gotta tell the other people. So him and Ikwa like split up to try to find Calidus, and then the other two groups, Indul and Amisa. So his two friends in third. They're like, we have to find them and tell them, warn them. And so he goes to find Indul, and he tells Indul, and then he's like, okay, now I gotta find Amisa. But before he finds Amisa, he like finds the little like MacGuffin that they're trying to find to win this game of like capture the flag, basically. So they're trying to like get this thing, and he like tracks down to that, and he's like, oh, Amisa must be near here. And then it turns out some dude from the Anguis is holding it. This dude tries to kill him. Amisa ends up like coming up and like shanking the guy in the back of the head to kill him, because she's like, oh, he was just supposed to stop you, but he actually was trying to kill you. What the fuck, Viz? And then for some reason she looks at Viz and she's like, what the fuck, Viz? And decides she's gonna like try to kill him. So she stabs him with a knife and throws him off a cliff, which of course, even though he's like fallen like quite a long distance into the ocean, he wakes up, and guess who's there to save him? Diago. Diago drug him out of the water and is like napping by him. And so he ends up going back through the forest. He finds Calidus mostly dead. And guess who saved Calidus? Diago. And so he like drags Calidus like back. Calidus dies in his arms. So then he like comes up to the steps where Viridius is telling everyone like, we've lost a bunch of people. We were under attack, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so then he's there and he's like, I will kill you all. And then he passes the fuck out. And he wakes up in a hospital room later. And he refuses to talk to Amisa. Viridius is like, you should talk to her because she can explain all this better. She did it because she thought she was saving you. She thought you were already gone, all of this stuff. And he's like, she can explain it. You need to talk to her. And he's like, I refuse to talk to her. I'm not listening to any of you guys. None of your information matters to me. And Viridius is like, I need you to choose religion so that I can protect you from both Ulquisker and whatever the fuck they're going to do to you, because there's some people that are coming and they're going to do some shit to you, and I can protect you if you do this. And he's like, no, I don't trust anybody. And so he chooses to go work for the censor. That's like kind of the end thing. Like, and then we get like a epilogue-y thing. Oh boy. So in the middle of this, I forgot that while he was in Seuss, he like overheard a military meeting, because that's what Relokia wanted him to be there for. Ro. That's what she wanted him to be there for, was to like spy on this meeting. And he found out that essentially military is controlling the Anguis, so that they can basically make it's a false flag operation, essentially, is what it is. Military is controlling this terror group so that military can put more power into themselves and take it from other members of the government. That's pretty much what is happening. But then when Viz gets like attacked by this Anguis guy who's got like a scar across his face, he's like, military doesn't control us as much as they think they do. We're actually controlling them. That's the political intrigue that's coming in the very end, when it's like all of this like, no, we're doing this, but they're doing this, but we're actually doing this, and they think we're doing this, but we're actually doing this. Like, it's dumb. So the end thing though is Viz is like in this like, he wakes up in this like in the labyrinth again, and words start like carving themselves into his arm. And because when he wakes up in the hospital bed, he's lost his like left arm. So we know something's already up when he wakes up and like looks at his left arm. But I was like, is bro dreaming? Is this some sort of like what actually happened? Because we kind of had this gap in time after something in the labyrinth, and there was like a little bit of like a skip, like a tiny skip, and then we resumed. And so I thought maybe we were like filling in something with a memory that was coming back to him, but no. So he's in the labyrinthy thing, and he's just finished the run, and like across his arm is like wait, and then run. So then goes to run, and then something happens, and then there's like a man talking to him, and I was like, oh shit, it's Searer. It's Searer, isn't it?
Cyril.
Searor, actually, Cyril Figure. Anyway, it's him, and he's like, I don't have time to explain to you, but you need to get out of this spot right now or you're going to die. And Viz is like, hold on, answer my 20 questions. And he's like, no, bro, you're going to fucking die. Get up and move. And Viz is like, oh, you look like old Keisker. And then dude's like, wait, you know him? And then he's like, bro, get the fuck up. You're going to fucking die. Like, he's like tried to tell him like 6 times. And Viz is like, no, answer my questions. I'm just going to sit in this spot right now, even though you're like panicking. You're like, dude, you're going to die. Dude, you're going to die. You got to fucking move. So we find out from this dude that essentially Viz has been cloned. So him losing his arm and everything and having actually consequences for his choices and like some sort of thing, it's a clone of him back in the real world, and now he's in this land. Whatever the land was called, there's like basically if he ran the labyrinth, he would get the opening to like these 2 lands or whatever, and I can't remember the name of one of them. But the one that he's in, like, Searor tells him, you're in this land, and Viz is like, but this looks just like Catton. And he's like, no, you haven't stepped outside of this cave yet. It's going to look totally different. And of course, we don't get to see outside of the cave, so we have no fucking idea. So he tells him, he's like, yeah, so you're a copy of you back home. You're the real you's here. So Viz did not lose his arm. And more than likely, that's why Amisa stabbed him, is because Amisa was like, shit, you're not you, because she saw like the back of his arm and the wound. And Viridius says your blood was tainted, and Amisa was trying to stop it. So she thought she was stopping whatever was happening to you. And he also said we had to cut your arm off because it was tainted and all this stuff. So it's something to do with the cloning procedure or whatever it is. Viridius was trying to explain it to him, and Viz was just like, fuck off and don't talk to me. And so Viridius was like, okay, if you're gonna be that way, do whatever the fuck you want to do. So we still have no idea what's happening because Viz doesn't want us to know what's happening. I won't be continuing with this series. Like, something, I don't know. I hated Viz. And the fact that he at least had some consequences at the end where I was like, okay, he's lost his arm, we're gonna have some character growth, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's gonna have something he has to actually deal with, and he's going to have to face it. And like, maybe he'll grow the fuck up a little bit because he also feels like super betrayed by Amisa. Maybe he'll like grow the fuck up a little bit, but no, we're still gonna get the same fucking Viz. So I was debating doing like a caw pile on this, which is like, it means this. I can't remember what it means at the moment, but I decided to just wing it here because I was already like, I'm gonna be talking way too much. This ending brought the rating down for me like a lot. I gave it a 2.5 because there's nothing wrong with the writing. The plot is meh. It's bloated. The plot is bloated because of all the world building that Islington was attempting to do, but I didn't feel was done very clearly. We like kind of know what things look like, but we don't really understand. Like, for all of the Viz quoting how will works from different books and the physics and stuff, we still don't really understand. My understanding is, best I can figure, is it's kind of like your life force, and you can somehow choose to cede that to people, like to give it away, but it drains you when you do it. So I'm just unsure. It's almost like skilling in the Robin Hobb world, but you don't have to think about it, because like skilling will like drain your energy because you're focusing on it in a specific way. But from my understanding, for will, if you're giving it, you don't have to focus on it. And they talked about things being like will carved and stuff, and I was like, oh, like skill rot, like people are using skill or will to like make things. And I was like, okay. But at the same point, like, I don't necessarily need a magic system explained to me, but if we're going to be having people take classes on how it works and why it works, then you need to explain it to us the same way that you're explaining it to them. You can't just give us like weird quotes about people's opinions on it and then be like, yeah, it works because of this quote. The other thing is, essentially Viz wants us to believe that a monarchy is better than some form of hierarchy. I mean, it's literally called the hierarchy. That is merit based, but not really merit based. Like nothing in the world is actually merit based, unfortunately. But we're supposed to just believe that like Viz is better. He's like, oh, I witnessed all of my people when they go to Seuss. He's like, all of my people were laboring in the same way, except for now they're seating, so they're not even happy to be working. And I was like, you think they were happy working under a monarchy? Like they were happy to be working to pay taxes to a monarch who was not voted in by them, they had no say over. You would think they were happy being peasants just because you wanted them to be happy to be peasants. There's this whole thing where Viz is just wanting to convince us that he is a better leader and would be a better leader than anybody in the hierarchy simply because he was born to be a leader. And I'm just like, I'm so frustrated by, I don't understand it because the Anguis are like, oh, they don't necessarily want to immediately stop everyone from using will because they're like, we can't do that. We need to like change how the system works and set a proper system in place. We can't just like break it. And Viz is like, no, we can just break it because other societies don't use will. We can just break it. And this is very teenage thinking because you can't just break down a system. You can't just tear down a system and have nothing in place to replace it because you have all of these different like mechanisms that work based on will. And it's not just with the upper echelons of people, it's like everyday people rely on this stuff. You can't just take away their transportation and tell them to figure it the fuck out. Like, you cannot do that and expect them to then be happy and support your leadership. So Reliquia was like, we're not planning on breaking it down immediately. Like we're going to take over and run it better and do it better. And he's like, oh, so you're just going to be the same? And I think we're supposed to be on his side about this as if it's the same thing. And that, like, I was just like, oh my God, this is. So we're supposed to support a monarchy. Like, we're supposed to be supporting Viz because he was trained to rule and born to it. And he was damn good at it, according to his dad, because he has honor and valor. And I can't get past it. And I don't understand why so many people I don't understand why so many people like this book. And I don't understand all the positive things about it, about how, oh, Viz is like an amazing character. The character development in this is so good. Literally everyone else is more interesting than Viz. I would more happily read a book about Diago the Wolf than I would about Viz. Like, give me Calidus' story. Calidus seems interesting and intelligent and understanding and compassionate. And Iden has an incredibly interesting backstory, with him being from a tribe that practices an entirely different way of life. And he had a shit ton of life experience and was trained in things as much but differently than Viz was. And his dad made a huge sacrifice for him. His story sounds way more interesting than Viz's, but yet we're stuck with Viz. And so I just genuinely am wanted this to be labeled YA as I was reading it. This is a YA book. So this was incredibly long. I'm going to stop here, or I'm going to be able to keep going on and on and on about all the things I didn't like about this. But I hope this was a breakdown for you that you could follow, that I was logical enough in my like proceedings of what happened, so you can get a play-by-play throughout the book of the plot. And if you have opinions that are similar to mine on this, I know that I am in the minority on my opinions on this. So if you really love this, like, you can tell me, that's fine, but I know that I am like in the minority on this. So I understand that there are reasons why people like this. And I have read a lot of positive reviews to try to see what I'm missing. And I can't see, I don't see it from the same perspective. So apologies if we don't align on this, but it's not for me. It's not for me. And I think reading stories with a young protagonist are just not working for me anymore. The closer I get to 40, the harder it is for me to believe that a 17-year-old who had 5 years of training in swordplay and hasn't been swimming in 4 years, but can still do like Olympic cool laps in waves within a riptide. Like, come on. Like, I know like teenage hormones can really power you through some physically demanding shit, especially if you're in shape as Viz appears to be. But come on, like, come on. Anyway, give this a like if you liked it. Follow me if you're interested in more full spoiler book reviews, and I'll see you soon.